Ha llegado la hora del terror. El reloj marca la medianoche, la hora más temida por aquellos que conocen las verdaderas pesadillas. Aquí, cada minuto que pasa te arrastra más profundamente hacia un universo dominado por horrores indescriptibles y terrores sin nombre. Las historias que escucharás romperán todas las barreras de tu imaginación, atrapándote en un ciclo infinito de miedo. No intentes huir. Esta hora es inevitable y el terror que despierta te seguirá por siempre. The asphalt ribbon unwinds differently when you've spent half a lifetime swallowing miles in a big rig. You develop a rhythm with the road, a kinship with the solitude. Or so I believed, before that particular ribbon unspooled across Nebraska under an indifferent October moon. Now I understand solitude has layers, and beneath the familiar quiet lies something else entirely. Something vast and cold and staring back from the glass. 23 years I'd wrestled these steel beasts, ever since trading textbooks for tonnage, chasing the ghost of my father down endless highways, coast to coast, border to border, through blizzards that turned Montana white and hurricanes that tried to peel Florida off the map. Nothing, not ice, nor wind, nor weariness, had ever burrowed under my skin like the specter on I-80. Nothing had ever made me doubt the testimony of my own reflection. It was late, the kind of late that bleeds in too early, maybe 2 bells past midnight. I was piloting my Kenworth, laden with automotive guts bound for Salt Lake City out of Chicago. The deadline gnawed. Noon delivery, no excuses. Ahead, the world dissolved into black ink, punctuated by the fleeting glint of shoulder markers. My headlamps sliced a thin wedge of reality from the void, just enough pavement to keep the 18 wheels turning. Inside the cab, a pocket of warmth held the autumn chill at bay. Talk radio murmured low, a thread of human noise against the engine's deep thrum and the hypnotic percussion of tires hitting expansion joints. I was deep in the zone, vigilance softened by routine, senses sharp but settled. My hand sought the thermos. The coffee inside was tepid, bitter, but caffeine was the currency of the night shift. 4 more hours until my mandated pause. The dashboard clock pulsed crimson. 2:17 a.m. And then, a flicker in the rear view. The habitual check, muscle memory honed over decades. But the memory fractured. Something was wrong. Someone occupied the sleeper berth directly behind my seat. My heart executed a violent lurch against my ribs. A panicked bird trapped in a cage. The wheel jumped in my grip. The truck yawed towards the gravel verge before I wrestled it back. In the mirror, stark and undeniable, sat a man, motionless, head canted slightly downward, clad in something dark. A jacket, perhaps. The faint luminescence from my gauges sculpted his silhouette from the gloom. My head snapped around, neck cricking with the sudden torsion. I craned, twisting to pierce the shadows behind me. Empty, utterly, profoundly empty. My bedroll lay undisturbed on the bunk. A few shirts swayed gently on their hooks. No man, no dark jacket. Tremors began in my hands, radiating up my arms, a cold sweat blooming on my brow despite the air conditioning's sigh. Breathe, eyes on the road. Keep the behemoth steady. Count to 10, Sal. I commanded myself silently. You're road-worn. Tired eyes play tricks. 30 seconds stretched into an eternity. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted my gaze back to the rectangle of glass. He persisted, unmoved, the same posture, the bowed head, the dark coat. Details sharpened now, close-cropped hair showing threads of silver, hands clasped loosely in his lap. The image possessed an unnerving solidity. "This isn't real," I whispered, the sound thin and alien in the familiar confines of the cab. "This cannot be happening." My thumb found the dome light switch. A wave of amber illumination washed over the interior. Again, I pivoted. Empty. The sleeper was vacant, just as before. Yet in the mirror he sat on, indifferent to the sudden glare. My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my eardrums, drowning out the engine's drone. Gravel snarled beneath the tires as I braked hard, pulling the rig onto the shoulder. The engine settled into a rough, impatient idle. Park. My hand fumbled with the gear selector, the shaking almost uncontrollable. Seatbelt unclicked. I rose, stepping back into the sleeper area. Nothing. No one. My fingers brushed the cool fabric of the bedroll where the mirror man seemed to sit. I searched every nook, shifted bags, peered into shadowed corners. Empty. Barren. Back in the command chair, I locked eyes with the reflection. He remained, static, waiting. Who in God's name are you? The question cracked, fragile in the charged air. Silence answered. No flicker of movement, only the bowed head, the clasped hands. I pressed my palm flat against the mirror, obscuring the phantom. Counted to 20, slowly. Lowered my hand. He endured. Logic scrabbled for purchase, offering flimsy explanations. A flaw in the glass. Some bizarre optical illusion born of fatigue and highway hypnosis. I tilted the mirror, angled it left, right. The figure held its position relative to the cab's interior, unwavering, defying physics. My phone displayed only mocking bars of absence. No signal in this Nebraskan void. And who would I call? Dispatch, the highway patrol. Yeah, hi, it's Sal. Got a situation here. Seeing a fella in my rear view, but, he's not actually in the truck. 15 minutes, I sat there, the engine grumbling, trapped between the inexplicable and the imperative. Drive, with that, presence, hovering just behind my peripheral vision. Abandon the truck, the load, impossible, deadlines, duty. With a final shuddering breath, I reached up and wrenched the mirror skyward, aiming its reflective face at the cab ceiling, blinding it. The tremors hadn't ceased as I engaged the gears and eased the Kenworth back onto the black top. For the next 20 minutes, I drove by side mirrors alone. My skin prickled, crawling with the sensation of being scrutinized. Every few heartbeats, the urge to glance up, to check that useless rectangle, surged like nausea. The not knowing became an itch I couldn't scratch, a pressure building behind my eyes. At 3:05 a.m., the compulsion won. My hand, seemingly of its own volition, reached up and nudged the mirror back into place. My breath hitched, caught somewhere between my throat and lungs. He'd moved. His head was up. He was looking directly at me. Through the mirror, his face resolved into chilling clarity, perhaps 60 years old, etched with the deep lines of time or sorrow, skin unnaturally pale. And his eyes, dark, depthless pools that seemed to penetrate the glass, my skull, my very soul. His expression was a void, utterly devoid of emotion, just staring. A sound tore from my throat, raw and primal. Shame didn't enter into it. It was pure, unadulterated terror given voice. The truck lurched again as my body convulsed, but instinct kept me from ditching it completely. My chest constricted, air refusing to fill my lungs. A green sign materialized in the headlight beams. Exit 2 miles. I mashed the accelerator, pushing the rig harder than was wise, knuckles white on the wheel, fighting the magnetic pull of those eyes in the mirror. I could feel the stare, a physical weight on the back of my neck. And then I saw it. His lips were moving, soundlessly, forming words I couldn't decipher. The exit ramp led toward the faint glow of civilization. A lone gas station, shuttered but lit, a diner humming with neon promise, a scattering of dark buildings. Brakes hissed, air escaping as I swung the rig into the empty expanse of the gas station lot. One last look. I had to. He was still there, still staring, lips still shaping silent syllables. Enough. Wallet, phone, grabbed them, threw the door open, stumbled out, nearly pitching onto the cold concrete. The night air was a physical blow. I slammed the door shut, backing away, breath pluming white under the stark fluorescent lights. For long moments, I just stood there, hyperventilating, gazing at my truck. From the outside, it was just a machine, inert and ordinary. No hint of the impossible contained within. Across the desolate asphalt, the diner's Open 24H'ers sign buzzed, a beacon of mundane reality. I lurched towards it on unsteady legs, craving light, noise, the simple presence of other humans. A tiny bell above the door jingled its announcement. The place smelled of stale coffee and fried food. Empty, save for a woman polishing the counter and an old-timer hunched over a mug in a booth. Both looked up as I entered. "Lord, honey, you all right?" the waitress asked, her eyes wide. "Look like you've seen a ghost." She wore a name tag, Maeve. I collapsed onto a stool. "Coffee, please. Black, strong." She slid a thick ceramic mug towards me. It took both my trembling hands to lift it to my lips. "Rough patch out there tonight?" Maeve inquired gently. A choked laugh escaped me. "You might say that." "Care to unload?" I looked at her. Maybe 50. A map of kindness etched around her eyes. How could I possibly articulate the phantom in my mirror? "Just tired," I mumbled. Long haul, eyes playing tricks. She nodded, a gesture of practiced sympathy, and moved off to tend to the old man. I stayed rooted to that stool for more than an hour, pouring cup after cup of scalding coffee down my throat, desperately trying to rebuild the walls of logic around the experience. Fatigue, hallucination, stress. But the certainty remained, cold and hard beneath the rationalizations. What I saw was as real as the chipped Formica counter, as tangible as the warmth radiating from the mug. The eastern horizon was softening from black to bruised purple when I finally settled the bill and walked back towards my rig. Dawn was still a promise, but the oppressive weight of the night was lifting. Things looked sharper, more solid in the pre-light. I approached the driver's side with trepidation. Peering through the window, I saw only the familiar clutter of my home on wheels. Empty. Taking a fortifying breath, I hauled myself up into the cab. The rearview mirror reflected only the mundane. My bedroll, the hanging shirts, the back wall of the sleeper. Nothing more. I adjusted it, scanned every angle. Vacant. A wave of relief washed through me, so potent it felt like weakness, immediately followed by a disorienting ripple of doubt. Had I dreamt it all? Was the solitary road finally cracking my sanity? Engine roaring to life, I guided the Kenworth back onto I-80, just as the first rays of sun fractured the horizon. The morning dawned crisp and clear, a brilliant autumn day unfolding. I drove west, pushing to reclaim lost time, my eyes flicking compulsively to the mirror every few seconds. It remained empty. By noon, the auto parts were delivered in Salt Lake City. By evening, I was loaded again, pointed east. The rhythm of the road reclaimed me. Days bled into weeks. The memory began to blur at the edges, the terror softening into a persistent unease. I almost succeeded in convincing myself it was a waking nightmare, a byproduct of too many hours staring into the hypnotic darkness. Almost. But sometimes, swallowed by the vast emptiness of a midnight highway, a flicker in the periphery of the mirror, a mere suggestion of shadow, would send a jolt of adrenaline through me, and the image would return. The pale, lined face, the dark eyes, the lips moving with silent urgency. The thought of selling the rig, finding work that kept my feet on solid ground, surfaced more than once. But trucking is marrow deep. It's the life I know. So, I drive on. I watch the mirror, and I wonder if he'll return, wonder what silent message he carried. Some drivers talk about the loneliness of the long haul. They don't know the shape of true solitude. They haven't shared their cab with an invisible passenger, a presence felt, but never confirmed by anything other than a trick of the light in polished glass. They don't know what it is to be utterly alone with something that has no right to exist. I still chase deadlines through the dark hours, but now I check my mirrors with a different kind of attention. And occasionally, when the night feels particularly heavy, the silence too profound, I angle that rear view toward the ceiling, crank the radio loud, and pretend I'm the only soul aboard, even though deep down, I suspect I'll never feel truly alone in this truck again. Last week found me on that same stretch of I-80, Nebraska again, around 2 a.m. That familiar cold dread prickled, The urge to look up. I fought it, knuckles tight on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead, but the compulsion grew teeth. Finally, I glanced. He was there. Same initial pose, head bowed, hands clasped. Then slowly, he looked up. Those dark eyes met mine in the reflection. His lips moved. And this time, clear as day, I understood the silent word. Brakes. Instinct slammed my foot onto the pedal. Air brakes hissed. The rig slowed dramatically, not a second too soon. Caught in the sudden glare of my slowing headlights, a massive deer vaulted across the asphalt, directly in my path. At speed. It would have been catastrophic. Pulverized truck, maybe worse. My heart hammered against my ribs, this time not from terror, but from the shock of near collision. When my gaze snapped back to the mirror, he was gone. I haven't seen him since, but the questions echo louder now. Why that first, terrifying appearance? What warning was he trying to deliver then? What else might he have struggled to convey across the veil? Answers feel impossibly distant. All I possess is this strange certainty. Sometimes what you see in the mirror isn't just you looking back. Sometimes it's a dispatch from somewhere else. And sometimes, if you want to keep rolling, you learn to pay attention to the passengers you collect in the dead of night, even those visible only in that small rectangle of silvered glass. The road hasn't changed, but my journey upon it has. Each mile marker holds the potential for his return. Every glance in the mirror is weighted with possibility. Fear, yes, it lingers, but beneath it a strange, unsettling gratitude has taken root. The phantom in my mirror saved my life. So I drive on. I watch. I wonder. Because out here, where the darkness stretches to infinity, you learn that you're never truly alone, especially when you think you are. That first Friday, the key turned stiffly in the lock of the salt-weathered bungalow, a place I'd chosen purely for its promise of quietude after draining weeks tethered to my desk. The online images depicted a modest one-bedroom, Siamese twinned to its neighbor by a substantial shared wall, offering solitude and the ocean's murmur just steps away. My needs were simple. A backpack, a couple of hours on the highway, an escape velocity from the city's relentless hum. Thrills weren't on the agenda, only sand between my toes, the tang of brine in my lungs, a temporary reprieve from life's accumulating static. Yet from that initial night, an oddity clung to the air, a subtle dissonance that stole my anticipated peace. The bungalow presented a diminutive porch overlooking a ribbon of asphalt snaking towards the beach. Inside, a Spartan living area held a time-worn sofa and a low table. The galley kitchen huddled to the right, equipped with essentials, a humming refrigerator, a few cupboards. It was the archetype of a coastal let, walls washed in stark white, floors tiled coolly underfoot, paint flaking like sunburnt skin around the window frames. Luxury was neither expected nor found. A rear bedroom contained a solid bed, a compact wardrobe, space enough for the oscillating fan-standing sentinel in the corner. Adjacent, the bathroom, passably clean, offered a stack of towels. Nothing overtly amiss, nothing to ignite suspicion. Having deposited my duffel bag onto the couch, I ventured out for provisions. A half-mile stroll brought me to the small local market. The sea breeze a welcome balm, its scent threading through the quiet lanes. Dusk was painting the sky by my return. The bungalow's air felt stagnant, heavy, prompting me to shut the door and activate the living room's ceiling fan. Its blades began their lazy rotation, stirring not just the air but also an unexpected fragrance. Intensely sweet, profoundly floral, like a sudden phantom bloom. It startled me. No such scent had registered upon arrival. My gaze swept the room, hunting for disguised air fresheners, finding none. Perhaps I reasoned it was the lingering ghost of a potent cleaning agent, some industrial-strength floral disinfectant used on the floors. Though assertive, almost cloying, it wasn't intolerable. Groceries stowed and a simple meal consumed, I settled with my phone, the aroma a persistent, unchanging backdrop note. Dawn summoned me early the next day, pulling me towards the shore where I spent the better part of the afternoon, letting sun and salt scour away the city's grime. Returning near sunset, I stepped across the threshold, and the floral assault struck anew, more potent this time, suffocatingly sweet, like burying one's face in an armful of lilies. My eyes stung momentarily. I pushed open windows for ventilation, though I'd consciously secured them before leaving. Could a peculiar draft siphon scents from the adjoining unit? The notion seemed improbable given the thick dividing wall, yet it was the sole hypothesis available. I hadn't glimpsed anyone next door. Their shutters remained partially drawn. No lights pierced their evening gloom. No vehicle graced their drive. No hint of life stirred within. It appeared vacant, unsurprising in the off-season lull. The letting agent had casually mentioned the neighbor owned the property, using it sporadically. The pervasive floral mystery remained, but I filed it away under residual cleaner. Subsequent weekends adhered to this pattern. Pack the car, endure the drive, unload, escape to the beach. And upon returning in the late afternoon light, inevitably, that same powerful perfume would saturate the living room. I conducted thorough searches, behind the sofa, beneath the table, scrutinizing vents. No hidden devices, no scented candles, potpourri, or incense. No locked closets, concealed secrets. The bungalow offered up its simple inventory readily. The scent possessed no discernible origin. Stranger still was its departure. If I lingered indoors during the early evening, it might hover for 20, perhaps 30 minutes, before vanishing abruptly. Not a gradual dissipation, but a sudden cessation, as if a switch had been thrown. One Saturday, movement next door finally broke the stillness. The growl of an engine drew my attention. A gray saloon eased into the adjacent drive. A lanky figure folded himself out of the car, moving with a hurried, almost furtive air, casting quick glances around. He retrieved a small suitcase from the boot, slipped inside his unit, and the door clicked shut. No acknowledgement, no neighborly wave. He seemed consumed by his arrival, oblivious or indifferent to my presence. I wouldn't intrude. Privacy was likely his aim. Still, a sliver of relief surfaced. The place wasn't entirely derelict. That night, sleep claimed me near midnight. I lay reading, the bedroom window slightly ajar to the ocean's distant sigh. Calm reigned until a distinct thump resonated from the shared wall. Not loud enough to truly alarm, merely unexpected. Furniture being shifted, perhaps? Something dropped. I listened intently, but silence resumed. Minutes later, I drifted off, Around 3, thirst woke me. Padding towards the kitchen in the dark, unwilling to fully banish sleep, I traversed the living room. And there it was, a concentrated blast of the floral scent, so vivid it halted me mid-stride. It felt freshly sprayed, immediate. Fumbling for the lamp beside the sofa, I cast light across the room. Empty, windows secure, no intruder. Too weary to dissect the anomaly, I drank my water, retreated to bed, and succumbed once more to sleep. By morning, the gray saloon was gone. An early departure, it seemed. This rhythm persisted. His fleeting appearances, late Friday or Saturday arrivals, followed by pre-dawn departures. We remained strangers, exchanging only these silent, observed moments of passage. He moved like a phantom through the periphery of my weekends. Then came the Saturday that shifted everything, nudging the unease into genuine disquiet. I'd spent a long, sun-drenched day with local acquaintances, surfing, lunch, meandering walks, returning after sunset. The floral miasma hit me the instant I opened the door, a physical blow that made my eyes water and my chest tighten. I dropped my bag, flicked on the overhead light. As my hand reached for the fan switch, I froze. A voice, soft, indistinct, whispering from somewhere within the living room. My heart leapt, hammering against my ribs. Straining to hear, I could discern no words, only a low, sibilant murmur, like a quiet chant or recitation. My first thought, the neighbor's television, perhaps, or a radio bleeding through the wall. But the sound seemed closer, emanating from the space near the sofa, inside my bungalow. Stealthily, my bare feet silent on the cool tiles, I crept forward. The whispering continued, a steady, hushed cadence, then ceased. I activated the corner lamp, swung around the end of the sofa. Nothing. The room stood vacant. Front door, locked. Windows, shut. The floral perfume was an almost tangible presence, stinging my nostrils. I stood rooted, mind racing, trying to impose logic onto the illogical. Then a faint rustle, fabric brushing fabric, or perhaps soft footfalls on a non-existent rug. A cold prickle spread across my scalp. Sweat beaded at my nape. Bravery isn't my defining trait, nor am I prone to paranoia, yet raw fear tightened its grip. "Hello?" I whispered, the sound foolish in the stillness. Silence answered, thick and cloying with the phantom sweetness. I retreated towards the hallway, eyes fixed on the shadowed corners of the living room. After a minute or two of charged silence, the atmosphere shifted. The scent began to recede, vanishing swiftly, inexplicably, leaving only the familiar hum of the refrigerator. Compelled by an unease I couldn't articulate, I searched again. Closets yielded nothing. Curtains concealed only walls. Under the couch lay dust bunnies and silence. No device, no speaker, no source for scent or sound revealed itself. Sleep was impossible now. I sat rigidly on a dining chair, scanning the living room, senses hyper-alert, until exhaustion finally dragged me under near midnight. My sleep was fractured, troubled by dreams of indistinct figures standing silently in the room, their lips moving soundlessly. The following day found me rattled. I packed hastily, departed earlier than planned, and spent the week wrestling with the decision to terminate the lease. Yet the rental was affordable, the coastal escape a genuine necessity. I rationalized, strange acoustics, maybe, plumbing groans, an overactive imagination fueled by fatigue. he opted to stay, to observe, clinging to the hope of a mundane explanation. Returning the next Friday evening, I came armed with a can of industrial-strength odor neutralizer. Upon arrival, I sprayed the living room liberally, hoping to preemptively break the cycle. Initially, it seemed effective. The air hung heavy with chemical sharpness, unpleasant but preferable to the unnerving floral sweetness. Perhaps this was the solution. Around 9, I sprawled on the sofa, an old film flickering on my laptop screen. Windows secured, the night outside cool and still. Normalcy seemed restored. Then near 11, a subtle chill permeated the air. I sat up. The lamp beside me flickered erratically, and then cutting through the chemical haze, that cloying sweet perfume seeped back into existence, materializing from nowhere. My throat constricted, nausea churned. Rising, I paced the living room, eyes darting, seeking any anomaly. The space remained stubbornly ordinary. No strange lights, no hidden mechanisms. The scent intensified, suffocating, bringing a fresh sheen of sweat to my skin. That's when the soft murmuring began again, just behind me. I spun around, only the blank wall, the empty space near the television stand. The whispering swelled slightly, clearer now, like someone speaking calmly from the far side of the room. Yet the words remained elusive, a rhythmic, gentle recitation. My pulse surged. Gooseflesh pebbled my arms. Fists clenched, I debated. Flee or attempt to capture evidence. My trembling fingers managed to activate my phone's camera, pointing it towards the perceived source. The audio registered nothing but my own ragged breathing, the whir of the ceiling fan. The whispering ceased. The scent flared, overwhelmingly potent for a heartbeat, then extinguished itself completely. Gone. My phone held no proof. A dull ache settled in my chest, the residue of adrenaline. My legs felt unsteady. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I ventured outside, suspecting the neighbor, despite the lack of logic. His side of the duplex was dark, shutters drawn tight. Pressing my ear against the cool stucco of the shared wall yielded nothing, no television, no voices, no movement. Only the distant rhythm of the surf and the sigh of wind through the coastal shrubbery. I stood there for long moments, gulping the salty air, trying to regain equilibrium. But the unease clung fast. The ensuing weekends brought variations on the theme. The return from the beach, the floral ambush, sometimes lingering, sometimes fleeting. Sporadic whispers like prayerful incantations just beyond comprehension, always untraceable. Sleep became a shallow, interrupted affair. I'd jolt awake, certain I'd heard a voice only to find silence. The neighbor's ephemeral visits continued, brief, nocturnal, silent. One Sunday morning, intercepting him as he loaded his suitcase, I attempted casualness. "Morning," I offered. A curt nod was his reply, his eyes evasive. "Ever notice a strange floral smell in your unit?" I asked directly. He paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his expression, then a flat no. He slipped into his car, offered no reciprocal query, no curiosity. Just the engine turning over, the car reversing, gone. The exchange left me colder than before. Here I sit now, typing this into my phone, balanced on my knee. It's late. My heart thuds against my ribs because the scent returned 15 minutes ago. It hangs in the air as I write, thick and expectant. Any second, I anticipate the whispering will commence. My nerves are frayed thin. Sweat films my brow. The fine hairs on my arms stand erect. Logic offers no solace. Chemical sense don't behave this way. They dissipate. They don't vanish instantaneously. The whispers correlate perfectly with the sense peak intensity, suggesting an unseen presence murmuring inches away. Tonight, silence prevails. Yet the absence of the whisper feels more menacing, a prelude. My gaze keeps flicking towards the shadowed corners of the room. The television screen is dark, reflecting my own tense face. My muscles are coiled, ready to spring at the slightest sound. My sole comfort is the escape hatch, the car keys, the open road. But the deposit, the need for this seaside refuge, holds me here. I oscillate between self-reproach, am I merely overstressed, suggestible, and the chilling certainty that something is profoundly wrong. I possess no tangible proof, only the unnerving tapestry of sensory experiences that make my skin crawl. It's not overt horror, not yet, but a persistent, gnawing disquiet. Is it the house itself, imbued with some strange resonance? Or my phantom neighbor, engaged in some inexplicable ritual on his side of the wall? But the sense-impossible physics, its sudden arrival and departure within my sealed space, defies that explanation. And the voices murmuring in my empty living room. Each drive down, anticipation curdles with dread. Will opening the door release only the familiar scent of salt and dust? Or will that sickly sweet perfume engulf me? I sometimes rehearse confronting the gaunt man next door, demanding answers. But his appearances are too fleeting, his demeanor too closed. So I remain, suspended between doubt and fear, telling myself I'm just tired, while a deeper instinct screams otherwise. Something here is fundamentally amiss. This sanctuary I sought has become a source of low-grade terror. Part of me wants to flee, forfeit the money, reclaim my peace. Another part, fueled by stubbornness or perhaps a morbid curiosity, stays. The beach still calls, the sun still warms, the vastness still offers perspective. But ascending the porch steps, inserting the key, these simple acts now trigger a visceral tightening in my gut. I pause, listen, brace myself for that wave of cloying fragrance. Sometimes, relief. Nothing. Other times, it's waiting, potent and undeniable. Its presence is utterly unpredictable. The hour grows late. Exhaustion presses down. This tension is unsustainable. I watch the living room peripherally as I prepare to extinguish the light. A slight tremor persists in my hands. The current silence feels heavy, pregnant. I fear the moment I surrender to vulnerability, the quiet chanting will begin, the perfume will swell. An uneventful night is all I crave, but experience has taught me not to expect it here. No proof exists beyond my own senses, yet I cannot rationalize what I've seen, smelled, heard. All I know for certain is that upon returning from the solace of the shore, the scent is often here, an invisible trespasser filling the air with lilies and whispers. Is it me, or is it this place? The question hangs unanswered, leaving me perpetually on edge, waiting by the locked door, wondering each time, silence or the suffocating sweetness and the voice that has no right to be there. For now, I wait, uneasy, forever glancing over my shoulder, hoping for clarity that never arrives. Imagination, I insisted. the first time the porcelain shifted. By its third subtle migration across polished wood, the comforting shroud of rational thought had frayed to threads. Something festered within these walls. This favor for Clara, a month guarding her ancestral pile, had curdled into an insidious creep of dread. An unseen gaze prickled my skin constantly. Survival, once presumed, now felt precarious. Ilara, that's my name. My foundations rest on logic, on the tangible. Phantoms and spectral whispers. Parlor games for the easily spooked. So, Clara's plea, a month's vigil over her sprawling Victorian while she chased commerce overseas, met my immediate assent. The house, though undeniably aged, possessed a certain grandeur, its creaks and groans mere footnotes to its history. I anticipated sanctuary, a month steeped in quietude. Days melted into a comfortable rhythm. Remote work bathed in morning light. Evenings spent tracing the lineage of shadows in unfamiliar rooms. Clara's heritage saturated the air, a museum of bygone eras jostling against contemporary comfort. Then the fourth night descended, cocooned in a velvet armchair, lost in print. A glacial breath ghosted across the room. The air thickened, chilled. A susurrus, less than sound, more the idea of a voice, brushed my ear. Drafts, I reasoned. An old house settling its bones. Imagination, that tireless trickster. But then, the vase. A fragile bloom of porcelain perched on a distant gueridon. A peripheral flicker, a definite, undeniable slide across the mahogany. Barely an inch, yet the world tilted. My eyes snapped focus. The vase sat placid, mocking my certainty with its stillness. A strained laugh escaped me, a dismissal aimed more at my own galloping nerves than any genuine amusement. The house's brooding ambience, I told myself, was infectious. Sleep that night was a shallow, restless affair. Daylight brought a fragile truce. Relaxation, however tentative, began to seep back in. But twilight, bleeding through the tall windows, ushered back the disquiet. Elbow-deep in suds at the kitchen sink, a solid thump resonated from the floor above. A dropped book? An intruder? Heart hammering against ribs, I ascended the grand staircase, braced for confrontation. Silence greeted me. The upper landing lay hushed, undisturbed. Room by room, a meticulous search yielded nothing. Yet as I pivoted to descend, a glint of porcelain snared my gaze. There, on an ornate console table where no table had held it before, sat the vase. Downstairs. It had been downstairs. "Steady, Ilara," I breathed, the words flimsy against the rising tide of wrongness. The house itself seemed poised, expectant, drawing a silent, collective breath. Sleep became a battlefield that night, every settling timber a gunshot in the dark. I wrestled with consciousness, finally succumbing to fractured dreams near dawn. Awakening felt like surfacing into colder water. The kitchen, a gallery of gaping mouths, every cabinet door flung wide. I stood frozen in the threshold, ice crystallizing in my veins. Impossible. I hadn't left them so. Trembling fingers nudged them shut, one by one, each click echoing unnaturally loud. As the final door met its frame, a swift darkness detached itself from the periphery, slithering across the plaster. I whirled. Nothing, just empty wall. Later, phone pressed tight to my ear, I feigned casual inquiry with Clara. "Any peculiarities I should know about. Her laughter, light and distant, dismissed it as the house's charming eccentricities. Benign quirks. My gut screamed liar. The days bled into a pattern of escalating strangeness. Objects developed migratory habits, shifting position the moment my gaze strayed. Footfalls echoed from unoccupied floors, above me when I was below me when I was above. One midnight awakening found the entire house ablaze with light, every switch flipped despite my meticulous nightly ritual of darkness. Sundown became a harbinger of dread. Night didn't just fall, it seeped into the house, animating it. Penumbral shapes writhed in the corners of my vision. Fleeting figures haunted the depths of mirrors and polished silver, dissolving upon direct confrontation. 2 weeks deep, sleep shattered by melody, faint, spectral, unmistakably a waltz, threading its way from downstairs. Pulse frantic, I stole down the staircase, drawn towards the living room's glow. What unfolded there remains etched behind my eyelids. The heavy furniture stood sentinel against the walls, clearing a vast central arena. And in that space, a spectral ballet. The damnable vase pirouetted in defiance of gravity. Tomes drifted like errant birds, pages whispering secrets to the air. And anchoring this phantasmagoria, 2 silhouettes, fluid darkness, waltzed to the ghostly strains. Rooted, I watched, mind struggling to knit reality back together. Then one shadow form pivoted, faceless, featureless, yet its attention locked onto mine, a palpable weight. The music choked into silence. Everything, vase, books, illusion, plummeted, shattering the quiet with a discordant crash. I fled, scrambling back to the dubious sanctuary of my room. Bolt slid home, burrowing beneath the duvet like a terrified child. Dawn found me wide-eyed, sleep an abandoned hope. Morning light brought the urge to bolt, to abandon Clara's house to its secrets. Yet something tethered me, a filament of defiance, a morbid curiosity, or perhaps an intuition stirring in depths I hadn't known I possessed. I stayed. Understanding became the mission. Hours dissolved in digital archives and local histories, excavating the house's past. What emerged sent a chill deeper than any phantom draft. Built in the twilight of the 19th century by a magnate of industry and his wife, fervent collectors who crammed its rooms with global artifacts. Then, the fracture. Their sole daughter vanished without trace. The parents withered soon after, grief presumably paving their path to the grave. Ownership shifted like shadows through decades until landing in Clara's lineage. Reading of the lost girl, a certainty resonated. She was the key. Her essence lingered, ensnared, and the dancing shadows, her bereaved parents, locked in an eternal, sorrowful waltz. Night fell again, but this time, armed with fragile knowledge and a desperate resolve, I met it head-on. I took my place in the living room, the epicenter of the spectral dance. Into the charged silence I spoke, my voice a tremor in the vastness. I know you linger, I projected, aiming for strength. I remain. I am not afraid. Reveal yourself, please. Stillness answered, stretching taut. Then the familiar invasive cold bled back into the air. That porcelain harbinger, the vase, glided across the table, an offering or a plea. My gaze lifted to the ornate mirror crowning the mantelpiece. Within its silvered depths, features coalesced from mist, A girl, perhaps 12, 13 summers old. Her expression radiated sorrow, a profound, century-deep loneliness. Transfixed, I watched her translucent lips shape 2 silent words. Help me. Fear dissolved, transmuted instantly into an aching compassion, a fierce resolve. No malevolence here, only desolation. A child adrift in time. The ensuing week became a feverish quest for liberation, hers and perhaps mine. I devoured esoteric texts, sought counsel from those who trafficked in the unseen, earning more than a few diagnoses of delusion, I suspect, piecing together fragments of a long, cold tragedy. The phenomena persisted, yes, but their character shifted. The edge of terror softened into melancholy. Objects drifted with a tentative grace. The waltz returned, but now as a lament, and sometimes piercing the deepest quiet of the night, the unmistakable sound of weeping. My final night arrived. I felt poised on a precipice. Within a circlet of flickering candles in the living room, the air pungent with burning sage, I spoke the carefully rehearsed words, an invocation woven from hope and arcane lore. The atmosphere thickened, crackling with an unseen energy. Candle flames danced wildly, and in their frantic light, she materialized. The girl from the mirror, no longer confined to reflection, stood before me, luminous, ethereal. A smile bloomed on her face, pure, unburdened relief. Slowly, exquisitely, her form attenuated, dissolving into the charged air until only the scent of sage and melting wax remained. The suffocating weight that had pressed down on the house for decades lifted with her departure. When Clara returned, the story spilled out. Astonishingly, she accepted it, nodding. Her family, she admitted, had always sensed whispers, oddities, but never the full, terrifying opera I had witnessed. I departed the following day, the house settling back into mere creaks and drafts. But I left irrevocably altered. My ossified disbelief had fractured. The world now held deeper, stranger dimensions, spaces where logic faltered and the unseen bled through. Sometimes in the quiet solitude of my own nights, a phantom waltz seems to drift on the breeze, a poignant echo, a testament that not all spirits rage, some merely yearn for witness, for release. Still, porcelain vases hold a particular chill for me now, a permanent shiver in the bone. That first glimpse, a spectral stain against the night, I dismissed it. A trick of refraction, perhaps, a phantasm born of glass and fatigue. But the third time? No, the third time confirmed the impossible. Something watched from the emptiness beyond the 14th floor. And as the hours bled towards dawn, a chilling question took root. Would my sanity hold, or would the abyss claim me before sunrise? My name is Elias. For half a year, the sterile heights of Atherton and Finch had been my nocturnal domain. Data entry, the meticulous archiving for a titan of finance, hardly the stuff of dreams, but it kept the wolves from the door, and the quiet suited my temperament. The building, a shard of obsidian piercing the city's heart, pulsed with life by day. At night, however, it became a hollow cathedral of commerce, utterly deserted save for myself. I'd clock in around 10, the scent of industrial cleaner still sharp in the air as the custodial crew departed. By 11, solitude reigned supreme. punctuated only by the low thrum of dormant machines and the distant wail of sirens painting the silence. I had cultivated a fragile peace with this isolation, almost savored it, until 3 nights prior. It was deep in the nocturnal nadir, around 2, when the city outside seemed suspended in vacuum. Lost in the hypnotic grid of a spreadsheet, a flicker at the edge of vision snagged my attention. My gaze drifted upward, toward the vast floor-to-ceiling panes framing the darkness, and froze. Suspended there, against the starless void, hung a face, its pallor almost phosphorescent, its eyes twin voids drilling into my own. A sharp blink, a desperate denial. I looked again. Gone. A shaky laugh escaped me as I rubbed tired eyes. "Rein it in, Elias," I chided myself aloud, the sound startlingly loud in the stillness. "That's the last energy drink." Though I forced my attention back to the screen, a visceral disquiet lingered, a cold knot cinching in my gut. My eyes kept betraying me, flicking back to the window, dreading and yet expecting the apparition's return. The following night passed without incident, a blessed normalcy that allowed doubt to resurface. Overtired, I reasoned, stress manifesting visually. Relief, however, proved fleeting. The 3rd night, it returned. This time the stage was the break room, the ancient percolator wheezing its final offering of lukewarm bitterness. My eyes lifted idly to the small window set high above the sink, and there it was. The face. Sharper now, starker. Gaunt planes defined sunken cheeks, and those same abyssal eyes pinned me. I lurched back, a strangled gasp tearing from my throat. The mug tumbled from nerveless fingers, exploding against the worn linoleum. When raw courage finally compelled another look, the window held only the indifferent night. Yet the image was seared behind my eyelids. This was no illusion conjured by exhaustion. A watcher resided in the void. Security? The thought surfaced, only to be smothered by practicality. A floating head outside the 14th floor? They'd summon paramedics, not backup. This burden was mine alone. The remainder of that shift became a torment of heightened senses. Every shadow writhed, every reflection in the glass seemed poised to coalesce into that dreadful visage. I cranked the overhead fluorescents to their maximum glare, retreating to the office core, away from the perimeter of windows. When the first fragile light of dawn finally bled across the skyline, escape felt less like departure and more like frantic flight. Calling in sick whispered its siren song, but necessity and a stubborn refusal to be routed by shadows, real or imagined, drove me back. The next night unfurled with deceptive calm. I slipped into the familiar rhythm, the click of keys a frail shield against the prickling awareness crawling up my spine. Then, the subtle disturbances began. Files I distinctly recalled archiving reappeared on my desk after a brief trip to the restroom. My coffee mug migrated, settling inches from where I'd left it, and pervading everything, that insistent, invisible pressure, the sensation of being observed. Around 1, a sound scraped against the silence, freezing the marrow in my bones. Tapping, not random, but rhythmic, deliberate, like skeletal fingers drumming against the glass. My head turned, A slow, unwilling pivot, neck muscles screaming in protest. It was there, pressed close, impossibly close to the pain, no longer ethereal but solidifying, gaining substance. Its mouth worked silently, shaping words I couldn't, and desperately didn't want to, decipher. A strangled cry escaped me as I scrambled backward, my chair crashing to the floor. I bolted for the elevators, thumb jabbing the call button with frantic repetition. As the polished steel doors whispered shut, a fleeting movement snagged my eye in their mirrored surface. A figure, impossibly gaunt and towering, gliding across the office expanse, closing the distance. The elevator's descent stretched into an agonizing eternity. When the doors finally parted on the ground floor, I erupted into the lobby, nearly colliding with the night guard, Mr. Davies, who rose startled from his console. "Easy there," he cautioned, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Everything all right, Mr. Elias?" I must have been a spectacle, ashen, drenched in cold sweat, eyes wide with unutterable terror. My mouth opened, but the words wouldn't form. How could I articulate the grotesque reality I'd fled? Not well, I stammered, the lie tasting like ash. "Need to go home." Concern softened his features. "Want me to get you a cab?" A violent shake of my head. "No thanks. Walk. Need air." Hurrying out into the cool anonymity of the street, I felt his gaze follow. But it was a faint echo compared to the predatory focus I'd endured 14 floors above. 2 sick days followed, hollowed out by fear. The thought of returning, of potentially seeing that face again, was paralyzing. But the job, the necessity of it, loomed large. So on the 3rd night I went back, armed with rationalizations, stress, sleep deprivation, the dubious coffee. I resolved to meet whatever awaited with cold logic. The initial hours were blessedly mundane. No spectral anomalies, no phantom taps. A fragile tendril of hope began to unfurl. Perhaps it had all been a product of a fractured psyche. Then, the world vanished. One instant, the office hummed under sterile fluorescent light. The next, absolute blackness descended. Emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the space in an unsettling spectral blue. My hand fumbled for my phone, security suddenly seeming like a very good idea when I heard it. A sibilant whisper, impossibly close, right behind my ear. "Elias." I spun, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. There, limned in the eerie cobalt glow, stood a figure, elongated, emaciated, its skin possessing a luminescence that seemed to drink the surrounding shadows. It was the face from the window, but now embodied, and the reality was infinitely more grotesque. Its limbs possessed an unnerving geometry, jointed at unnatural angles, fingers tapered to needle-sharp points, and its eyes, dear God, its eyes were twin wells of absolute darkness, absorbing all light, promising oblivion. "Whoa, what are you?" The question tore from my throat, ragged and thin. The creature's mouth stretched, a horrifying rictus that mimicked a human smile but conveyed only nightmare. "I am the Watcher," it rasped, its voice like dry leaves skittering across stone. "I am the Waiter, and you, Elias, are chosen." My legs, suddenly alien and trembling, carried me backward. Chosen? For what? Even as the words escaped, a primal certainty screamed that I did not want the answer. It began to advance, its locomotion jerky, disjointed, like a marionette manipulated by a malevolent, clumsy hand. I ran. Faster than I knew possible, I fled through the darkened labyrinth of desks, plunging into the echoing void of the emergency stairwell. Behind me, pursuing me down the concrete spiral, came that desiccated whisper, gaining ground. "You cannot escape, Elias. You are mine now." I burst from the building's side door into the indifferent night, not daring to stop, not daring to breathe, until blocks separated me from that glass tower. Only then did I risk a backward glance. Atherton and Finch loomed, a dark monolith against the bruised pre-dawn sky. And there, framed in a single window on the 14th floor, a pale, watchful face regarded me. I never returned. My resignation, terse and final, went via email. A new job materialized, one firmly rooted in the predictable sanity of daylight. Yet sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, I wake abruptly, the phantom sensation of being watched prickling my skin. And when drawn to my own bedroom window, I sometimes fancy I see it, a familiar, luminous pallor observing me from the shadows across the street. What it was, what it desired, remains an agonizing mystery. Was it truly there, or some shared delusion born of solitude and stress? I cannot say, but this I know with chilling certainty. The night shift holds terrors beyond exhaustion. And if you value your soul, avoid the lonely heights after dark. You never know what waits on the other side of the glass, patiently observing, choosing its moment to claim you. Fear wasn't a language I spoke fluently, not until these past few weeks began whispering anxieties into the marrow of my bones. For years, the night shift as a security guard at this modest residential cluster had been a quiet affair, a predictable cycle under the indifferent moon. Rounds completed, gates checked, cameras monitored, a ritual punctuated only by the occasional scrounging feline near the dumpsters or the masked banditry of a raccoon. But recently, something else shares the shadows, something decidedly not four-legged and feral. My evenings commence around 10. The old sedan sighs into a visitor's spot, and I tread the familiar path to the guard station by the main gate. A brief exchange with the departing shift, memos from management, a faulty hallway bulb. Then the solitude settles in. My duties chain me partly to the flickering monitors within the station, but the flesh and blood patrols remain essential, tracing the perimeter, weaving through the parked vehicles. 25 units spread across several buildings, cradling a central parking lot secured by a resident-only remote gate and crowned by walls glittering cruelly with embedded glass shards. Not opulent, but generally secure. Normality frayed about 3 weeks past. It began subtly, with a perception of a shape lingering in a notoriously dim quadrant of the parking area. One overhead lamp there casts a weak, apologetic glow, leaving a corner near the concrete boundary wall perpetually steeped in twilight. It's a place where neglected cars gather dust, where a stubborn patch of cracked asphalt cradles a shallow pool that defies evaporation, forever damp, smelling faintly of decay. One night, tracing my usual circuit, my eye snagged on it. A figure cloaked in a hooded sweatshirt, its posture fixed, facing the silent row of automobiles. I halted, every muscle taut. It remained immobile. My pulse quickened, a frantic drummer against my ribs. Under the scant moonlight, I could only discern the cowl's silhouette, the vague slope of shoulders beneath. I forced a challenge. "Hey, who goes there?" The question dissolved into the night, unanswered. Hesitantly, I advanced, my flashlight beam slicing the darkness, betraying my tremor. Just as the light was about to paint detail onto the form, it wasn't there. Vanished. My beam swept frantically behind the cars across the stained pavement, seeking footprints. Any sign? Nothing. Only emptiness and a sudden chill draft that raised goose flesh on my arms. My first taste of genuine unease on this job. Back in the station's sterile light, I rewound the footage. The cameras, antiquated and grainy, offered little clarity. Yet for a fleeting moment, a dark smudge occupied that precise spot on the screen, motionless, just as I'd witnessed. Then abruptly, it blinked out. Not walked away, not faded, simply ceased to be within the frame. The following night, my gaze clung to the monitors. Patrols were executed with heightened vigilance. 2 nights passed uneventfully. Then on the 4th, during the graveyard stillness of my 2 a.m. round, the air humming with latent electricity, a distant television murmuring from an upper window, a faint rustle snagged my attention near the wall. I spun, flashlight stabbing the dark. There it stood, the hooded shape occupying the same space. The gloom swallowed any features, rendering it a faceless cowl, a posture of waiting. My breath hitched. "Do you live here?" The words emerged brittle, shaky. Again, silence was my sole reply. This time I didn't hesitate. 5 purposeful strides closed the distance, my shoes scuffing loudly on the asphalt. It remained. 1 more step. Gone. Like snuffing a candle flame. 1 instant, present. The next, void. My flashlight beam danced wildly, probing beneath chassis, tracing the wall. My heart hammered against my sternum. The radio felt heavy in my hand. Police? Report a disappearing shadow. The absurdity stayed my hand. I completed the round, but the monitors held my gaze hostage for the remainder of the shift. Days later, tentative inquiries among residents yielded little. Most noticed nothing amiss. But one elderly gentleman from Building B, Mr. Abernathy, admitted seeing a hooded man near his car around midnight some days prior. Assuming a would-be thief, he'd retreated, unwilling to risk confrontation. He hadn't reported it. His car, checked the next morning, was untouched. No damage, no signs of forced entry. Yet he swore he saw the hooded figure prowling. A shiver traced my spine. A burglar? Someone casing the vehicles? It felt wrong. Thieves scout. They move. They don't materialize and dissolve. How did it vanish? The subsequent nights were steeped in tension. A knot formed low in my belly even before clocking in. Midnight became an hour of clenched jaws and coiled muscles. Each scuttling leaf, each flicker of a distant street lamp became suspect during my patrols. I clung to the mundane reassurances: flashlight, radio, the option to call for backup. But the anxiety made each circuit feel leaden, interminable. Perhaps a week into this unnerving pattern, the figure reappeared on the camera feed around 1:30 a.m. I leaned closer to the split-screen display in the guard station. The camera covering that corner flickered. A known issue, likely a loose connection. Within that electronic stutter, I saw it. The dark shape, static. My hand gripped the edge of the desk. A bead of sweat traced a path down my temple. Zooming yielded only pixelated ambiguity, a mere silhouette against the grainy backdrop. For a full minute, maybe two, I watched its absolute stillness. Then another camera glitch, a brief visual snowstorm, and upon clearing, emptiness. I grabbed my flashlight, heart pounding a frantic rhythm, and burst from the station. My rapid footsteps echoed unnervingly between the buildings as I hurried to the corner, beam cutting ahead. The air hung cold, carrying the familiar sense of damp pavement and faint exhaust fumes. Methodically, I checked between, under, behind each parked vehicle. Nothing. The perpetual puddle reflected only my own tense face in the dim overhead light. I crouched, searching its murky surface. No disturbance, no alien footprints. I stood listening, straining for the sound of flight. Silence reigned. Unease began to seep into my daylight hours. Sleep became shallow, fractured. Behind closed curtains, my mind replayed the image of the hooded shape, questioning its nature. Human trickster or something stranger. Splashing water on my face, forcing down coffee. I'd attempt to regain equilibrium, only for the tension to ratchet up again as evening approached. A wearying cycle of hypervigilance and restless exhaustion took hold. I broached the subject with the condo manager, Mr. Finch, a compact man, balding, perpetually clad in a neatly tucked collared shirt. I outlined the sightings, the vanishing act, the unsettling camera footage. Concern flickered briefly in his eyes, but viewing the grainy recordings elicited only a dismissive headshake. Could be a glitch, Silas, he offered, or some kid playing games. Keep an eye out. Let me know if it escalates. My request for improved lighting in that corner met with a non-committal promise to look into it. The unspoken cost hanging heavy in the air. Rationalizations offered little comfort. A skilled trespasser adept at concealment, perhaps. But how bypass the gate sensors? Scale the glass-topped walls without a sound? Possible, yet improbable. A nocturnal resident? Why the secrecy? The impossible disappearances? And Mr. Abernathy's corroborating sighting lent weight to my own experiences. We couldn't both be conjuring the identical phantom. One night, strategy shifted. Instead of patrolling, I secreted myself near the troubled corner, tucked into the deep shadow cast by a hulking SUV around midnight. I waited watchfully. The night breathed softly around me. Distant sirens, the low hum of electricity. An hour crawled by, my legs stiffening. Then a flicker at the edge of vision, near the wall. My focus snapped tight. There it stood, maybe 15 feet away, facing the lot as before. My heart surged, a painful thudding against my ribs. I attempted a slow, stealthy approach. 2 steps. It must have sensed me. Gone. I sprinted the remaining distance. Emptiness greeted me. Behind me, a faint scuff on the pavement. I whirled. Only my own shadow stretched long and distorted. The fine hairs on my arms prickled. Later that same night, near 3 a.m., back within the relative safety of the station, I heard it. Distinct footsteps crunching on the gravel path, flanking the building. Flashlight clenched. I threw open the door. The sound ceased instantly. I stepped out, sweeping the beam across the path, into the dense shrubbery. Nothing stirred. The air was still, the parking lot lights casting their usual pallid glow. Sweat slicked my forehead, my uniform shirt clinging damply to my back. When dawn finally broke and my relief arrived, I felt utterly drained, frayed at every edge. Conversations with the day shift guards proved fruitless. They saw little beyond the gate, their duties largely confined to the station during daylight. One offered a jesting, "Maybe lay off the caffeine, Silas." I forced a smile, but the knot of tension in my shoulders remained stubbornly tight. A few nights later, around 2:45 a.m., another camera sighting. Same corner, same hooded silhouette, though perhaps fractionally taller this time, or maybe just the angle. Flashlight in hand, I bolted from the station, power walking, legs unsteady beneath me. Turning the final corner, I saw its back, a first. The hoodie, dark gray or perhaps black, looked worn, aged. I saw its shoulders rise and fall slightly, mimicking breath. "Stop!" I yelled, the command sharp in the quiet air. Its head pivoted slightly, just enough to register movement, but still no face revealed. Then it moved, bolted, a definite scuffle of footwear on asphalt. I gave chase for a few frantic steps as it rounded the end of a parked sedan. I reached the car scant seconds later. No one. Not enough time for anyone remotely human to have concealed themselves. I stood panting, hands on my knees, staring at the vacant space. No wind stirred, no door slammed, no gates whirred. My flashlight beam remained fixed, scanning the silent tableau. A sour twist in my gut. Pins and needles prickled my arms. Glancing up at the apartment windows revealed mostly darkness. A few isolated lights burning, but no watching eyes. The complex felt utterly deserted, save for me and the lingering echo of impossibility. Phone in hand, I considered calling Finch, but what more could I convey at this hour? Defeated, I retreated to the station, sinking into the chair, striving for calm that wouldn't come. As the nights bled one into the next, the presence felt more pervasive, even when unseen. A peculiar pressure in the air sometimes, a prickling certainty of being watched. My camera checks became obsessive, my patrols more frequent, each shift stretching into an eternity. Benign sounds, a creaking gate hinge, the pop of a cooling engine, became potential harbingers. The quiet refuge of my job had transformed into a crucible of sustained anxiety. One evening, around 11, Mr. Abernathy stopped by the station. His face was etched with worry. "Saw him again," he murmured. "By my car, maybe an hour ago. That hooded fellow." He asked if anyone else had lodged complaints. I admitted they hadn't, but confirmed my own sightings, the camera evidence, the baffling nature of it all. He simply nodded, the lines around his eyes deepening. "I don't like it, Silas. Makes a man feel uneasy." I knew the feeling intimately. He shuffled back to his apartment, leaving me alone with the deepening conviction that this wasn't simply going to fade away. A desperate urge to see its face, to understand, warred with a primal fear of what that revelation might entail. Nearly a month now since the initial encounter. The figure persists, an intermittent phantom haunting that benighted corner. Sometimes nights pass in tense quiet. Then it reappears, standing sentinel, gazing toward the vehicles, occasionally drifting between them. It attempts no vandalism, no overt threat. It simply is. Yet its presence poisons the dark, making every round a dreaded pilgrimage. My attempts to corner it, to capture definitive proof, remain futile. Varying my route, staking out the spot, maximizing camera zoom, nothing works. It manifests on its own terms, leaving no trace but the chilling certainty of its passage and the residue of fear in my hammering heart. I exist now in a state of perpetual anticipation. Trickster, disturbed individual, or something else. Each time I step into the nocturnal parking lot, my gaze instinctively seeks that corner. My grip tightens on the flashlight. My breath catches. My hearing strains against the silence for the telltale shuffle of unseen feet. It feels like a confrontation perpetually deferred. A standoff with an opponent whose nature remains terrifyingly ambiguous. The police remain uncalled. What evidence is there, truly? Mr. Finch prefers quiet avoidance. Mr. Abernathy frets, but the other residents remain oblivious or dismissive, labeling it ghost stories. I'm not laughing. Every shift poses the same silent question. Will tonight be the night? Will I see the face? Will the vanishing act finally yield some terrible clarity? The tension sits like a stone in my gut, a constant companion on this tightrope walk between routine and dread. Dawn approaches. Another shift nears its end. An hour ago, the monitor flickered, revealing the familiar shape in its usual haunt, followed by the usual, inexplicable absence. My nerves are raw wire. A fine tremor persists in my hands. 15 minutes until relief arrives. Home offers little respite. Sleep will likely be a shallow, ceiling-staring affair. Tomorrow night, the cycle resumes. Back to this place, back to the patrols, the cameras, the ever-present flashlight, back to waiting for the hooded figure, caught between the desperate hope for answers and the chilling fear of what they might be. For now, there are only questions, piling higher with each unsettling visitation. Betrayal wears many faces, but I never imagined mine would be one of them, leering back from the silvered glass. Yet there I stood, Elias Thorne, watching appalled as my own mirrored countenance warped into something other, something utterly estranged from the man I knew. The rupture began on a Tuesday, a day bleached of distinction, utterly unremarkable until the familiar became alien. The morning rites unfolded as always, the steam of the shower, the scrape of the razor, the minty foam of toothpaste. Nothing deviated. Time, however, pressed close. Lateness spurred me through my ablutions, my gaze merely skimming the bathroom mirror. It was then, a flicker at vision's periphery, a motion subtly out of sync with my own hurried dressing, that snagged my attention. I stilled, toothbrush dangling, and pivoted to confront the glass directly. For an instant, equilibrium returned. My reflection regarded me, hair showered damp, a fleck of white clinging to my lips' corner. But the stillness fractured. As I observed, a subtle alteration crept in, a lag, infinitesimal yet undeniable, in the mirrored movements, as though my duplicate existed a fraction of a second behind reality. A blink, involuntary on my part, was echoed by the reflection, but a beat too slow. I lifted a hand, waved it tentatively before the glass. The image mimicked the gesture, yet its motion was disjointed, puppet-like, possessing the uncanny quality of flawed digital animation. Ice traced a path down my spine. Impossible. Mirrors don't glitch. Fatigue, surely. Deeper exhaustion than I'd realized. Hastily finishing with the toothpaste, I splashed icy water onto my face, snatched my keys, and fled the bathroom, attempting to dislodge the clinging unease. The day dissolved into a hazy procession of hours. Concentration fractured at my desk. Thoughts persistently snagged on that disquieting bathroom tableau. By evening's return, logic had almost woven a comforting narrative of overtiredness, of hallucination born from stress. Almost. Stepping into my apartment, the hallway mirror intercepted my passage. I froze, key still clenched. The reflection was wrong, fundamentally wrong. The face gazing back was undeniably mine, yet its expression was a grotesque parody, where stark shock and rising fear sculpted my features. The face trapped in the glass wore a smirk, sly, knowing, steeped in private amusement. I recoiled, stumbling backward, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. This defied reason. Mirrors are passive observers. Reflections do not act independently. Yet mine did. As I watched, paralyzed by a primal terror, the mirrored hand lifted in a jaunty wave, a gesture of cheerful greeting utterly incongruous with the dread seizing me. I turned and ran. Didn't pause until the bedroom door slammed shut, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Perched on the bed's edge, hands trembling violently, I wrestled with the impossible sight. Stress, I insisted inwardly. Overwork, perhaps the onset of illness. There had to be a rational thread, but a deeper intuition, cold and certain, whispered that something profound, something deeply aberrant, now resided within my mirrors. The subsequent days became a waking nightmare. Avoidance was the strategy, yet reflective surfaces proliferated. The car's rear-view eye, the slick sheen of shop fronts, the polished steel of kitchen appliances. Everywhere, glimpses of that not-quite-right reflection ambushed me. Sometimes the corruption was subtle, a fleeting distortion of features, a movement just fractionally asynchronous. Other times, it was flagrant. Once, glancing sideways at a boutique window, I saw my reflection stride past in the opposite direction, casting a look back over its shoulder, its face split by a wide, chilling grin. Leaving the apartment became an ordeal reserved for stark necessity. Sheets were draped over every mirror, shrouding their accusatory gazes. Tape obscured the tiny lens of my phone's front-facing camera. Futile gestures. The wrongness seeped, an invisible contaminant blurring the edges of reality. Sleep offered no sanctuary. Behind closed lids, the twisted replica of myself materialized, wearing that smile that wasn't a smile. Sanity frayed. Was this madness? Was any of it tangible? After a week suspended in this paranoid limbo, endurance shattered. Answers were needed. Understanding, however dreadful, was paramount. So, defying every instinct, shrieking retreat, I resolved to confront the phenomenon. I stood before the shrouded bathroom mirror, my hand unsteady, gripping the cool porcelain of the sink basin. With agonizing slowness, I reached up, fingers catching the edge of the sheet, pulling it away. For a protracted moment, nothing. My reflection stared back, pale, gaunt, underscored by the dark smudges of sleeplessness. Normal, mundane, merely glass and light. Then the change flowed across it like ink dropped in water. The face in the mirror convulsed, features liquefying, rearranging into contours utterly alien. Eyes dilated, darkening, consuming the surrounding flesh until only bottomless voids remained within a countenance rapidly shedding its humanity. A primal urge to flee, to scream, to wrench my gaze away, warred with a paralytic dread. Frozen, I was forced to witness my reflection's metamorphosis into nightmare incarnate. And then, it spoke. "Elias?" A voice breathed, shaped by my own vocal cords, yet utterly estranged, an echo resonating from some impossible elsewhere. "We have waited, oh so patiently, for this proper introduction." What are you? The question scraped from my throat, barely audible. The thing in the mirror smiled, a wide, unholy grin bisecting its face. "We are the summation of Elias," it whispered, the smile stretching impossibly. "The myriad potentials you deny, the selves you ought to be." "I don't understand," I managed, voice thinned to a thread. "Naturally," it replied, condescension dripping like venom, "confined as you are, trapped within your singular impoverished reality. But we perceive the spectrum, every branching path, every iteration of you that flickers in the possibility space. And we have selected you, Elias, to join the collective." A frigid dread coalesced low in my gut. "Join you? What does that mean?" The creature's grin widened further still, a horrifying crescent. "Emancipation, potency, ascension beyond your wildest imaginings." As the words echoed, a peculiar, insistent tugging manifested, an invisible current seeking to draw me forward into the glass. My grip tightened on the sink, knuckles white, resisting the unseen force. "No," I heard myself say, the firmness startling even me. "I don't want that. I refuse to become whatever you are." A snarl twisted the monstrous features, rage momentarily eclipsing the awful smile. "Choice is an illusion you can no longer afford," it hissed. "The integration has commenced. Soon you will be subsumed, one of us, willingly or otherwise." The pulling intensified, a relentless pressure. My feet began to skid on the tiled floor, dragged inexorably toward the mirror despite my desperate resistance. Panic flared, white hot. In that instant, instinct overrode thought. Releasing the sink, I swung my fist, channeling all my terror and revulsion into the blow aimed at the monstrous face, staring back. Glass erupted, shards sprayed outward like shrapnel. Sharp, burning pain lanced through my hand and forearm as fragments sliced deep. Yet the agony was distant, unimportant. The pulling sensation ceased abruptly. The voice vanished. I collapsed to the floor amid the glittering debris, blood welling warm and slick from my wounds. Tremors racked my body. Breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. But I was still Elias, still human, still here. In the ensuing days, every mirror was banished from my apartment. Reflective surfaces became objects of intense aversion, navigated like hazards. I told myself the ordeal was concluded, the battle won. Yet sometimes, a fleeting movement caught in the periphery, a ripple on a puddle, a transient gleam on dark glass, conjures for a heart-stopping instant that warped visage, those inhuman eyes locking onto mine. And the question surfaces, cold and persistent. Was it truly vanquished? Or does it merely wait, patient as eternity, for another chance to shatter the fragile boundary and pull me into its impossible realm? Answers elude me. I know only this. I can never again meet my own gaze without a tremor of fear. For I have glimpsed the truth lurking on the other side of the glass, that the most terrifying reflections are sometimes not reflections at all. My awareness snagged on the old refectory, perhaps a fortnight ago. I was shuffling through the security cordon, the air thick with the usual morning drone, when stray words about peculiar resonances from the disused dining hall drifted past. Initially, I dismissed it. This sprawling industrial carcass where I earn my keep thrives on rumor. Decrepit wings and forgotten chambers are legion. The building breathes with groans, rattling pipes, and the low thrum of ancient ventilation. Such sonic detritus never troubled me. Yet this place, the cafeteria, felt aberrant from the outset. That afternoon, navigating the main artery of the complex, a familiar chill seeped through my shirt. The overzealous climate control. Fluorescent tubes overhead sputtered, a testament to deferred maintenance. Down the long perspective, the cafeteria entrance loomed, a slab of steel, its paint scarred like old wounds. A ponderous thing, its opening always unleashed a drawn-out metallic shriek that hunted you down the echoing corridor, particularly unsettling in solitude. I applied my weight, the groan answering me, and slipped inside. The immediate impression was one of perpetual twilight. The ceiling fixtures were functional, yes, but riddled with dead or dying bulbs, casting a weak, uneven illumination. Long tables marched in formation, flanked by benches. Towards the far wall, several bore the incongruous presence of plates and cutlery, stark against the emptiness. Perhaps remnants of a forgotten lunch shift, I reasoned, or dereliction by the cleaning rota. I didn't dwell, yet a faint disquiet settled, the feeling of trespassing on sequestered ground. Around the midday meal hour, drawn by a nagging curiosity about those place settings, I returned. The newer, refurbished wing is the customary haunt for staff. This relic is generally shunned. The air hung heavy, stale, imbued with the ghost of long-abandoned food. A musty tang pricked my eyes. More tables sported tableware now. Closer inspection revealed smudges marring the surfaces, disturbingly akin to rust blooms. The utensils, knives, forks, spoons, lay in precise arrays, yet dulled and tarnished as if unearthed from a time capsule. I prowled the aisles, searching for any sign of recent use, any morsel to explain their presence. Nothing. Only those ochre stains, suggesting dried gravy, perhaps, or the slow bleed of corroding metal. From a distant corner, a subtle rattling reached me. I moved towards it, towards the kitchen pass-through, a wide aperture framed by a metal counter. Peering through the service window revealed a gallery of obsolescence, hulking stoves, ovens like dormant beasts, a refrigerator seemingly sealed for generations. As I neared the kitchen's threshold, the rattling ceased. I groped for the light switch, a click, a low electrical hum, but the bulbs remained stubbornly dark. I lingered, listening. Silence reigned, save for the irregular, stuttering buzz of a single fluorescent tube overhead. No draft stirred the stagnant air, no movement betrayed another soul. Yet the conviction of a presence solidified behind me, a prickling certainty of being observed. I spun, heart leaping. Empty tables stared back. A tremor started in my hands, my palms filmed with sweat, my throat constricting. Retreating towards the dining area, the phantom odor of decay intensified, knotting my stomach. Later, mentioning the plates to colleagues elicited only blank stares or poorly veiled amusement. Probably junk left by the old occupants, one offered. Another cautioned me away from the sector entirely, citing pervasive mold and rot, warning of sickness. No one corroborated the noises, just the usual refrain. Old building, strange sounds. Doubt began its insidious work. Was I merely projecting unease onto inanimate objects? The following day, however, brought an auditory encounter I couldn't rationalize away. It was late afternoon. Shifts here often bled into evening. The corridor stretched silent but for my own footfalls. Then it began, a distinct clinking, the unmistakable sound of cutlery striking ceramic. Not isolated taps, but a busy chorus. Silverware scraping against plates, multiplied, as if a full dinner service was underway. It conjured images of a bustling eatery, utterly discordant with the known abandonment of this space. The sound spilled down the corridor, raising gooseflesh on my arms. Rounding the final bend, I stood before the steel door. The clatter was louder here, possessing a steady rhythmic quality, the cadence of communal dining. Hesitation seized me. My breath grew shallow. Hand on the cold metal, I pushed. The hinge's familiar scream sliced through the phantom meal, and instantly, like a switch thrown, the clinking vanished. Silence flooded back. I scanned the room, deserted. Yet the tables were dressed again, more numerous than before. I counted at least 12 settings dispersed across 3 tables. Each plate bore the same rust-hued signature. The cutlery looked even older now, deeply tarnished, arranged with meticulous care, poised for imminent use. I advanced slowly, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The lights buzzed their erratic rhythm. The stale perfume was stronger, sharper, reminiscent of gravy left to fester in summer heat. My stomach clenched. My eyes watered against the fetid air, threatening nausea. No actual food, just this pervasive olfactory ghost. Who was arranging this morbid theater? I searched the floor. Dust, scattered detritus, but no footprints, no sign of recent passage. I resolved to report this, seek out security. But upon reaching their office, some minor crisis held their attention, and my concerns were waved away. One guard offered a jest about cafeteria poltergeists, his tone dismissive. Another curtly advised me to avoid that wing. Frustration mingled with a prickle of embarrassment. I retreated home, carrying the unease like a physical weight. Sleep offered no refuge. Dreams replayed the scene, filled with the scrape of unseen forks on porcelain, shadowy figures hunched over the tables. I'd wake abruptly, slick with sweat, staring into the darkness, fighting to regulate my breathing. I had to return. The next day, the compulsion was undeniable. To ascertain if my sanity was fraying or if something tangible was occurring. Morning found me drained but resolute, heading straight for the cafeteria. The corridors were still quiet. The heavy steel door stood slightly ajar. Unusual. It never rested open naturally. I slipped inside, cautious. The air felt viscous, tinged with a new scent. Something scorched. In the gloom, the tables presented themselves, set once more. The plates, I noticed, seemed chipped now, their edges ragged. The utensils bore deeper stains. Had they always been chipped? Had I missed it? Then a whisper, faint but distinct, breathed my name. My pulse stuttered. I froze. It emanated from the corner, near the kitchen window. I moved towards it, each step deliberate, my boots crunching on what felt like shards of broken ceramic scattered on the floor. Reaching the counter, I peered over. The whisper died, leaving my name echoing in my mind's ear. Gooseflesh pebbled my arms. The hairs on my nape lifted. A tremor shook my legs. Leaning further, scanning the shadowed space behind the counter, nothing but a stack of dust-laden trays. I confided in a work acquaintance about the whisper. He chuckled, attributing it to overwork. But the certainty remained, sharp and undeniable. My next visit, I decided, would be documented. Phone camera at the ready, I returned after my shift concluded. Standing in the corridor, I initiated the recording, drew a shaky breath, and pushed open the groaning door. My phone's beam sliced a pale cone through the oppressive dimness. My hands felt icy, my heart hammered. Faintly, the clinking resumed, softer this time, more distant. I panned the phone slowly, capturing the vacant tables, the empty chairs. Nothing manifested on screen. Later review confirmed it. The recording held only silence, save for my own breathing. Yet the sound persisted in the room. A ghostly echo of metal on earthenware. Approaching the nearest table, I illuminated the place setting. Dusty plate, tarnished fork, knife, spoon. I touched the fork. Its surface felt gritty, leaving minute flakes like rust or dried blood on my fingertips. Raising my hand, I caught a faint metallic tang. I wiped my fingers on my trousers, a wave of revulsion washing over me. At the second table, the settings were perfectly spaced, meticulously arranged. My light snagged on a smear near the center of one plate, dark brown, almost black, with a crusted texture. My stomach recoiled. As I leaned closer, my phone's light began to pulse erratically. Tapping the device yielded nothing. The beam faltered, died, then flared again. My name reverberated in my skull, a sibilant echo without source. I whirled around, searching the rows of empty tables behind me. Panic surged, a cold tide. I scrambled for the exit, the door slamming shut behind me with its mournful shriek. I nearly collided with a colleague emerging from a nearby room. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he remarked casually. "That cafeteria," I managed. "It's wrong." He just shrugged, indifference plain on his face. It crystallized then. No one else perceived this. They didn't care, or they simply thought me unhinged. For several days, I maintained my distance, willing the experience to fade into memory. I immersed myself in work, actively suppressing thoughts of the noises, the smells. But the refectory wasn't finished with me. The clinking began to follow, phantom sounds bleeding into the mundane. In the break room, amidst the chatter and microwave hums of the newer wing, I'd catch the faint chime of utensils. "Did you hear that?" I'd ask, only to be met with puzzled negatives. My appetite withered. The mere thought of food conjured the rancid odor, turning my stomach. My hands developed a tremor. Recalling the state of those plates brought cold sweat prickling to my skin. After a week stretched taut with this low-level haunting, I knew I had to go back. Proof, or perhaps closure, was needed. I would document it irrefutably, show someone. If the recordings remained blank, perhaps a doctor was the next step. I chose late afternoon, when shafts of waning sunlight pierced the high clear-story windows of that wing, offering a semblance of natural light. I stood before the door, the corridor silent. Steeling myself, I entered. The scene was amplified. More tables now, 2 entire rows added at the back, seemingly materialized from nowhere. All meticulously set. I counted upwards of 20 settings. A constriction seized my throat. The miasma of decay was nearly suffocating, like inhaling damp, moldering cloth. Covering my nose and mouth with my sleeve, I advanced. Phone raised, recording initiated. I began narrating softly, panning across the tables, the ceiling, capturing the oppressive emptiness. My hands shook, but I pressed on. Passing the tables, I noted fresh marks on the plates, new rust-like blooms, dark viscous smears. I drifted towards the kitchen counter again, phone light probing the shadows. That's when it came, clear as struck crystal, my name, uttered in a low hiss, almost a sigh. I jerked the phone around, desperate to capture the speaker. Nothing. Utter emptiness. My chest tightened, breath catching, pulse thundering in my ears. The phone screen displayed only dim tables, vacant chairs, silent cutlery. Then, an eruption of sound, louder than ever before. A frenetic clatter of forks and knives striking plates, dozens of sets, over and over. My scalp prickled, my knees felt weak. I stared, transfixed, at the tables. They remained utterly still. Yet the cacophony raged, an invisible banquet reaching its fever pitch. My phone, I knew instinctively, would capture only static. My name breathed again, a slow whisper directly beside my ear. I spun, bracing for a face inches from mine. Nothingness greeted me. My mouth was parchment dry. Swallowing felt impossible. My breath came in ragged gasps. The clinking intensified, a manic rhythm. It broke me. I fled, my footsteps echoing crazily off the tiled walls, bursting into the corridor. The instant I crossed the threshold, the sound ceased as if severed by a blade. My phone continued recording. Panting, I fumbled to stop it, my hand trembling so violently I nearly dropped the device. Later, heart still erratic, I reviewed the footage. It showed me, walking through the desolate cafeteria, my own voice a strained commentary on the scene. But the audio track was barren. A faint electrical buzz, perhaps from the dying lights, but no clinking, no whispers, none of the overwhelming sonic assault I had endured. My voice was there, proof of my presence, but the phenomenon itself remained elusive, uncaptured. I still work in the complex. I still pass that scarred steel door. I don't go inside. Belief remains elusive among my peers. It's my mind, they suggest, or the building's weary groans. But the sensory data is branded onto my memory. The sounds, the textures, the putrid air. Sometimes, late, when the corridors are hushed, I catch that stale odor drifting, a phantom scent that sends my pulse skittering and hastens my steps. The spectral rattle of tableware sometimes echoes in the quiet moments. Something in that room, I feel, resets the stage endlessly, waiting. It calls my name in those phantom whispers, an invitation to a perpetual rotting feast. When it happens, my chest constricts, my stomach churns, and a chill deeper than the faulty air conditioning settles over my skin. I fight the urge to listen, to turn back, to push open that heavy, squealing door. But the thought is there, every day. I have no explanation, only the chilling certainty that it's real, and it's waiting for me. The neon artery of the 24-hour gas and snacks sign pulsed weakly against the immense Nevada dark, bleeding a sickly luminescence onto the asphalt sea of the empty lot. 2 in the morning. Behind the counter, I stood sentinel in a kingdom of stale coffee and fluorescent hum, wondering if the promise of perpetual service held any meaning out here, adrift in the quiet tide of the graveyard shift. Oblivious, I was, to the storm gathering just beyond the horizon of the next few hours, a tempest that would demand more than just the price of gasoline. Leo, that's me. 23 years spun out, college ambitions frayed and tucked away, now navigating the nocturnal stillness of this highway outpost. It wasn't the dream, sure, but the paycheck anchored me, and the vast empty hours offered sanctuary for worn paperbacks and the nascent scenes of a screenplay flickering in my mind. This particular rotation began under familiar stars. 10 p.m. saw me relieving Sal, the evening shift veteran. Our customary exchange unfolded, whispers of profound inactivity, his familiar lament about the coffee machine's latest rebellion. Splendid, I mused. Another mechanical adversary in the long watch towards dawn. The initial hours dissolved like sugar in lukewarm water. Coolers restocked, their glass doors sweating under my cloth. Floors mopped into gleaming temporary perfection. The coffee machine, a temperamental beast, coaxed and cursed into sputtering compliance. Around 1, the growl of a diesel engine announced a brief punctuation. A trucker, weary-eyed and freighted with miles yet to conquer, seeking fuel and caffeine. His grumbled monologue about the endless road met my sympathetic nods, a fleeting communion in the shared solitude. Then, just past the 2 o'clock threshold, the ordinary fractured. Deep within the dog-eared pages of Kerouac, a dissonant rumble vibrated through the soles of my feet. I looked up. 3 vehicles had materialized from the void, claiming the vacant lot. A grizzled old Chevy, a van scarred with untold histories, and starkly incongruous, a sleek obsidian SUV breathing silent menace. 6 figures emerged, men carved from shadow, their ages spanning decades, a strange constellation of weathered grit and sharp-edged intensity. Some wore the geography of barroom brawls etched onto their faces. Others possessed a businessman's veneer, stretched taut over something predatory glinting in their eyes. Their entrance sucked the stale air from the store. A sudden electric pressure descended, the kind that precedes lightning's violent kiss. They didn't browse. They deployed, fanning through the aisles with a chilling economy of motion. One near the coolers, another by the magazine rack, a third drifting towards the entrance. My pulse quickened, a frantic bird trapped in my ribs. The eldest, a tall silhouette crowned with salt and pepper hair, approached the counter. A smile played on his lips, cold and disconnected from the Arctic calculation in his gaze. "Bathroom key?" he inquired. The words smooth pebbles dropped into the sudden quiet. I nodded, a jerky puppet motion, reaching for the plastic tag hanging on its designated hook. Turning back, the geometry of their positions struck me, deliberate, encompassing. One sentinel by the door, another's gaze fixed unnervingly near the security camera's blind eye. "Here you go," I managed, striving for a steady tone that cracked around the edges, extending the key. He accepted it, yet remained rooted. Leaning forward conspiratorially, his voice dropped to a serrated whisper. "Listen close, son. Here's the play. Pop the till. Give us the cash. Then you show us the safe. Cooperate, and maybe, just maybe, you see the sunrise." Reality buckled. Not here. Not in this forgotten comma on the long sentence of the highway, where the peak drama was usually a declined credit card. "Look," I heard myself stammer, a flimsy shield of reason. "There's barely anything, mostly cards. Maybe you could just..." His hand lashed out, a viper strike, twisting my collar, yanking me into the suffocating proximity of his stale breath. "This ain't a debate," he snarled, the mask of civility discarded. "The register, now." My fingers, suddenly alien and trembling, wrestled with the keys. The drawer sprang open with a pathetic chime. As I scooped the meager collection of bills into the waiting maw of a canvas bag tossed onto the counter, my thoughts scrambled for an escape vector. The panic button beneath the counter pulsed in my awareness. A silent scream I couldn't utter, not with their eyes dissecting my every tremor. "The safe," the leader commanded, the register's bounty deemed insufficient. "Where?" My feet carried me towards the cramped back office, a condemned man walking the green mile. My mind raced, constructing and discarding strategies. The safe, governed by an immutable time lock, wouldn't yield until morning's arrival. Would this truth be my shield, or my death warrant? As I haltingly explained the mechanism, raw frustration flared in the leader's eyes. He pivoted, murmuring urgent, guttural phrases to his cohorts. Fragments snagged in the tense air. Waste of time. Move to the next. A fragile ember of hope flickered. Perhaps the register's paltry sum would suffice. Perhaps they would simply vanish back into the night. Then, a phrase, delivered with chilling finality, snuffed it out. "Can't leave loose ends." Time warped, stretching thin. I saw the leader's hand slide beneath his jacket, a gesture pregnant with lethal intent. In that dilated moment, instinct, raw and primal, seized control. My body lunged, not away, but towards the fire extinguisher, bolted to the wall. I tore it free, the metal cold against my panicked grasp, and crushed the trigger. A blinding geyser of chemical white erupted, instantly choking the small space. Through the swirling chaos, I swung the heavy cylinder, felt it connect with yielding flesh. A strangled cry of pain. No time for assessment, only flight. I burst from the office, propelled by curses and enraged shouts echoing behind me. The familiar landscape of the store became a chaotic battleground. Aisles of chips, pyramids of candy. I weaponized the mundane toppling displays in my wake, creating fleeting barricades. The glass doors beckoned, promising escape, but a figure materialized, blocking the path. Pure reflex, I snatched a gallon jug of blue windshield washer fluid from a nearby stack, hurling it with desperate force. It struck his head with a sickening, wet percussion. He crumpled. The cool kiss of the night air was freedom. I plunged into the parking lot, the slap of pursuing footsteps on asphalt drumming a terrifying rhythm behind me. Darkness lay beyond the fluorescent perimeter, a sanctuary I sprinted towards, praying the desert would swallow me whole. My lungs burned, twin fires raging in my chest, the sounds of the hunt fueling my desperate pace. Where was I going? No idea. Only away. Ever away. After an eternity compressed into minutes, I risked a backward glance. Nothing but undulating shadows, though distant, angry shouts still carried on the wind. I pressed on, stumbling over unseen rocks and skeletal brush, the gas station dwindling to a faint, malevolent glow on the horizon. As the adrenaline tide began to recede, the chilling reality washed over me. Alone, adrift in the vast, indifferent desert, hunted by men who dealt in violence. Just as despair threatened to engulf me, twin stars bloomed in the distance. Headlights, a vehicle tracing the ribbon of highway. Without conscious thought, I veered towards it, a scarecrow silhouette waving frantically against the dark canvas. The car slowed, hesitated, then stopped. An older couple, their faces etched with travel weariness and sudden concern, peered out. "Help," I choked out, the words ragged, torn from my throat. "Please. Men, they robbed the station, tried to kill me." Perhaps it was the naked terror resonating in my voice, the wild disarray of my appearance, but belief dawned in their eyes. A door opened, an invitation into their small, mobile world. As the car accelerated away, the wife's fingers were already dancing across her cell phone, dialing 911, bridging the gap between nightmare and rescue. The subsequent hours bled together, a montage of flashing lights, methodical questions, the sterile reassurance of a brief medical check. Back at the gas station, the police found echoes of the violence. Overturned shelves, the lingering chemical haze, the discarded washer fluid bottle. But the perpetrators had dissolved back into the night. In the days that followed, the initial shock subsided, leaving behind the phantom limb of fear, the haunting chorus of "what if," the stark, indelible knowledge of how easily my narrative could have ended. Yet beneath the fear, a strange current stirred. Pride. I had stared into the abyss and hadn't blinked away. I walked away from the gas station job, its fluorescent lights now forever tinged with menace. But the ordeal reforged me. College, once a distant shore, became a tangible goal, pursued with a newfound, sharper focus. My writing continued, but now plumbed deeper veins, informed by the stark reality of danger. the unexpected resilience unearthed within myself. Sometimes in the deep quiet of night, phantom footsteps echo, a ghost of adrenaline surges. But then I remember, I survived. I thought faster. I ran harder. I escaped. And if I could face down armed men with nothing but wits and a fire extinguisher, surely navigating the complexities of a degree, of building a future, wasn't entirely beyond my grasp.